Welcome to Visionaries Global Media, your number one source for podcasting entertainment. Visionaries Global Media, envisioning excellence on a global scale.
Nattering CHEL, 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 Nattering CHEL, CHEL, Nattering CHEL, 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 Nattering CHEL, Nattering CHEL, 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 Nattering.
What up, world? It's your boy E coming at you from the Nattering with E studios for a special edition of Nattering CHEL. This week, both myself and Torrey are busy. Torrey's busy with things, and I'm still battling this cold that will not go away. Anyways, uh, in the event that this happens in the future, we've decided that I'm gonna be making some bonus trailer episodes or bonus teaser episodes where I pick a bunch of topics and I discuss them for about 30 minutes tops instead of the normal 90 minutes when Tori and I are both here. So before I get going on this, I just wanted to say thanks again everybody who's listened because 105 podcast episodes, holy smokes, as of this recording, 105, holy moly, holy moly. Uh the NHL itself is, I think it's in a good state, you know. As much as Tori and I love specifically the Leafs, I like the fact that the whole league you can now watch on television and you don't have to pay for an extra streaming service. Um, I would cough right now, but I'm trying not to because I'm sick, but I wanted to, that's a shot directly at uh football, like soccer football, because it doesn't seem fair to me that we have to pay all these high prices for cable plus streaming and things like that, but you can only watch specific leagues on specific stations. Like you think a station called Fubo TV would have not only the Premier League, but also all the leagues in England, all the leagues across Europe, and so forth. And so with the NHL used to have the NHL Network in Canada at least, but now Rogers slash Xfinity bought the rights for the NHL Network, and now you can watch pretty much anything. I mean, you still get the blackouts for the Canadian markets, which is a little bit of a head scratcher. But if you like those West Coast Pacific games for the NHL, I mean, Sportsnet's the place to be. It'd be nice if TSN had a little bit more, but beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So this week, this episode is about all the current stories going on in January, in the middle of January. Uh, as of this episode, Connor McDavid has been suspended 3 games for his cross-check on Connor Garland of the Vancouver Canucks, with basically no time remaining in a loss on the weekend. Now, Garland literally was jumping and piling on McDavid, and he retaliated. And of course, the referees were able to only spot McDavid's infraction, not Garland's. And so McDavid was suspended 3 games for a vicious cross check across the face. The thing too is that like whether they caught Garland's infraction or not, you can't hit a guy in the face like you can't cross check him in the teeth and think like you're not going to get in trouble. It's the same as when like people steal in the real life and you're just like, if you get caught, like you're getting in trouble for stealing, right? Like it's the same thing. Like just because Connor McDavid is arguably the best, if not one of the top 5 best NHLers in the league, does not mean that he should be above the law or above any uh, suspensions. Because if that was the case, what's to say he himself wouldn't turn into a more dirty player? Imagine a guy like Brad Marchand, who's arguably a top 15 player, being allowed to slew foot or cross check guys got across the face and things like that. And he knows that because he's in that top 15 of players, he won't be allowed to, I mean, he won't be suspended. So it's crazy. I'm glad that McDavid got suspended, and I'm glad that he decided not to appeal it because I think if he appealed it, it would have been it would have been a worse look for him than it would have been for the league because he would have been like, I'm Connor McDavid. I literally am the franchise of the NHL. I am the face of the NHL. Like you can't suspend me. And it would have made him look like a baby. And then people who don't like the Oilers would have hated them more. Like that would have given more ammunition to them. So I think McDavid did the right thing by just accepting the 3 game suspension. The other thing too is if you want to look at it on a more positive light for our Oilers fans, maybe he's taken the 3 games off just to nurse some injuries as well that he may have because these stars they get hacked and whacked all the time. Like Connor Garland isn't the first person to tick off McDavid this year, and McDavid he got off to a slow start. He's since put up epic numbers like he always does, and I'm sure he's got like a couple bruises, bumps and bruises that he wants to recover from anyway. So this 3 game suspension might be nice enough for him to. Typically, teams play about 3 to 4 games a week, so gives him a week off. He could get some other stuff done in his personal life and come back more refreshed and ultimately one of the better players in the league. Um, Apparently, too, the Connor Garland spoke after the game and he said, I was he literally said, and I quote, he reacted to me. I was bothering him. Yes, he cross-checked me in the mouth, but like I don't take it personally because it's the heat of the moment, it's the heat of the game. Having said that, you have to suspend McDavid for that because you can't, as I said earlier, you can't have people thinking, oh, if you're a star, you could get away with anything. Otherwise, you get people like Marchand, who I referenced, uh, getting away with all these different liberties. And the thing too is just because a guy can put up a ton of points doesn't mean that he's the like squeaky clean guy that everyone hopes he is. I mean, everybody's got a flaw, right? So having McDavid basically suspended for a week, it sends a message to the whole league that look, we're not playing favorites here. If you do this, everybody's getting suspended for this. When Torrey and I reconvene next week, we'll probably reflect back on this and see if it was the right move or the wrong move. So, our next story is our beloved Toronto Maple Leafs. That's right. You can't go an episode of Nattering CHEL without hearing about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And to say that the Leafs are in a bit of a weird situation would be putting it. I mean, it's probably the correct phrasing. Putting it down as a weird situation because they're one of these teams where they can have an excellent regular season, but if they go out in the first round of the playoffs, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that Matthews, despite all the games that he's missed this year, may still end up leading the team in scoring, uh, because he, like McDavid, is one of the best players of the league. It doesn't matter if Marner signs an extension or not if the Leafs lose in the first round. And it doesn't matter if William Nylander scores 50 goals if the Leafs lose in the first round. At this point, they're such a stacked team, and they've been going to the playoffs despite the lack of success. I heard this on a I think it was Amazon Prime during the Lightning game on this week, but I heard one of the announcers say, you know what, Toronto's been to the playoffs like almost the entire decade, 9 of the 10 years, and they've always I mean, despite only going to the second round once, they do have that experience of playing in playoff games. So it's not like once you get through the first round of the playoffs, it's not like there's anything new for the players. There's always this talk that like um once a team gets out of the first round, they can't make it past the second round because like they've already spent all their energy. But like with the Leafs, they've been in the playoffs every year for the last 9 years. And so you'd think even if they get to the second round, they shouldn't be tired by that point. They shouldn't be like, oh, we were so close when there's still 3 or 4 rounds to win. Because the ultimate goal for teams like the Leafs, the Oilers, the Canucks, um, the Hurricanes, the list goes on. Pretty much every team, ultimately every team, is to figure out a way to win the Stanley Cup. Now, I say every team, and you're probably looking at me like, wait, Anaheim and the Islanders and the Rangers and these other teams that are completely in the last place of their divisions are still looking to win a cup? And I say absolutely. It may not be this season's cup, but the ultimate goal as a franchise is to win, is to win the Stanley Cup because you you get the most TV revenue with the TV deal. You get the best options in terms of free agents wanting to sign with you. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you win, everybody wants you. If you lose, it's trickier, you know? Um, with the Leafs recent with the reason I think the Leafs are better this year compared to previous years is that they have this they're sort of developing a kill factor. And what I mean by that is that instead of them uh, being quote unquote killed by the other team after the other team comes back, they're saying, you know what? Don't worry. We'll be back in this game. We have the abilities to do that. And despite mediocre special teams, they've been able to show that, they can they can contend with pretty much everybody in the league. A prime example of that was earlier in January. They played the Montreal Canadiens on Saturday Night Hockey. The Canadiens, who have been struggling to go from a bottom feeder team into the playoffs, jumped out to a 3-0 lead. And myself included, I turned off the game at that point in disgust, mainly because there's also playoff football on. So as someone who does podcasts about various sports and things like that, I was like, oh, there's something else to watch. If one team's losing, maybe one of my other teams is winning. That's how I looked at it. I turned the game back on roughly around the third period after watching some playoff football, and the Leafs are up 6-3. And I'm like, oh my God, I just missed like half of the game because I didn't believe, for lack of a better phrase. And my point that I'm getting at is that no game is over until the final whistle ultimately blows. There's so many people, fans, media like that. If a team goes down uh, by multiple goals in the first period, they're like, no, we're done. This game's over. But I mean, as the Leafs showed, they went from giving up 3 goals in the first period to uh, coming back in the second period and third periods and scoring 7 unanswered goals to win the game 7-3, which was which is crazy considering that they were down 3-0. They battled back. Not only did they battle back, but then they held the lead afterwards, which is something that we didn't see from previous Leaf teams. Previously, if the Leafs had gone down 3-0 in the first period, game would have been like 4-1 by the time we turned it back on in the third period because the Leafs wouldn't have competed. But Craig Berube, the coach this year, and his staff have pressed some buttons, both with the top players and the secondary scoring, to make them believe that, you know what, we're in every game. We can get back into everything. They lost 3 or 4 games where they got away from what they were doing, but then as soon as they were able to score again, because they had trouble scoring for a bit, where it was one or two guys basically carrying the load. And mind you, those one or two guys were Matthews and Nylander. So as long as you have two guys that between the two of them can score about 80 or 90 goals a season, you're always in games. But when you get the rest of the team being like, you know what, no, I want to contribute too, and I want to um, put up some goals as well, that's a scary prospect. Because previously, the way that they were built was our top line or our top two lines, those are the guys that are going to get us the goals. Everybody else is just going to be status quo. But now you're having guys that are like, I want to score no matter what the case is, no matter whether we're, sorry, excuse me, no matter whether we're losing, we're winning. I want to score as much as possible. Um, and that's a scary thing to grasp because if the Leafs could keep this mindset when they're in the playoffs, there's no reason why they can't get out of the first round. Even if the other team is better than them, you have some of these teams, they have better skill than other teams, but the team with the less skill has more will or more grit or more oomph to win a game. And for that reason, I think that like if the Leafs are starting to develop this kill factor or this oomph that's like, you know what, no matter what we do, we are ultimately always going to be in games and we're always going to be engaged. That's a scary prospect because if Berube and his staff can unleash that in not only the top players in the Leafs but the whole lineup, I mean, there's no reason to believe they can't go all the way to a cup, maybe win. Who knows? So Tori and I will probably discuss that at ad nauseum next week because you know us, we love the Leafs. Um, our next major headline is Ovechkin's chase to get Gretzky's goal scoring, uh, to break Gretzky's goal scoring record. So Alexander Ovechkin, he's been in the league since around 2005. He seems to score between 40 to 50 goals a year, and more recently he's distributed the puck, but for a while there it was like 40 to 50 goals with like 10 assists. And so you could tell all he wants to do is score. All he wants to do is try and catch Gretzky's record. And he started off this year very, very hot, where you're like, he might even do it in the first 50 games. Then he broke his leg, and they said, you know, you're not going to be back till March, and you might have to wait till next season to break the record. However, I kid you not, he comes back from a broken tibia like 4 weeks after he's diagnosed. Misses only, I think, like 10, only 10 games. I mean, 10 games is a lot, but like in the grand scheme of things, not too crazy. And instead of struggling to keep up with the pace, he looks better. He looks better than ever. He looks better than ever. Sorry, as I'm doing this recording, I'm still in the middle of that cold, but I don't want to miss like 10 days of not doing a podcast. So I'm trying to do a pod despite all this coughing. So pardon me for the coughing. Um, for Ovechkin, he missed about 10 games in the span of a month. He's back. He's scoring at the same pace as he was pre the injury. And according to NHL.com, Ovechkin is literally 21 goals away from uh 895, which would pass Gretzky by one. And you have to believe that a guy like Ovechkin, he's not going to just be like, oh, 895 is good. Let me go to 900. I could see him getting like another 24, 25 goals this season to bring himself up to 900 goals. Uh, and catching Gretzky. The thing that I wonder too is because when Ovechkin scores, he seems to go the same way that the Capitals go. The Capitals actually have depth this season, and so they're another team that, you know, after missing the playoffs a couple years in a row, if Ovechkin is fully recovered from the tibia injury come the playoff time, and he's still scoring at a crazy pace, there's no reason to say that it can't be maybe Leafs versus uh, Capitals in the Eastern Conference Final going into the um, Stanley Cup Finals. Because unfortunately, the Caps and the Leafs won't face each other unless you're playing a video game. Uh, and personally, I believe that if Ovechkin is healthy, what would be crazier than him getting the scoring title is him winning his second Stanley Cup in the span of 6 years. I mean, that would be a great way to retire. He gets the scoring title, and he gets the uh, Stanley Cup for a second time in a few years. That'd be amazing. But I mean, as a Leaf fan, hopefully that doesn't happen in terms of the Stanley Cup. But I want to see him uh, get the uh, most goals because Gretzky hasn't played in the NHL for about 25 years. I want to say 20. Yeah, about 25 years. 1999 till now. So yeah, 20, 25, 26 years. And so for the fact that nobody's passed him since is crazy. So to see Ovechkin do it in about a 20-year career is pretty impressive. But yeah, that's so our so Tori and I will definitely talk about that too, about Ovechkin and can he catch Gretzky and can he uh, break any more records while he's there. My personal belief is that either McDavid or Matthews are the next ones up to catch Ovechkin, who Ovechkin's goal scoring record. Uh, both guys score at about a 40 goal clip a season. So it might even take them less time. Who knows? Because they're two guys who can do absolutely anything. Um, our last story before we get out of here is what the heck is going on in Vancouver? So over the last 6 weeks, I'd say Vancouver has gone from last year. Rick Tocchet came in after a brutal exchange between the owners and Bruce Boudreau, where Boudreau was the coach, but the owners were making him stay the coach while they were finalizing deals with Tocchet to replace him. They initially made Tocchet a consultant and said to Boudreau, "You got to stay on as the coach." And then they fired Boudreau the next day, made Tocchet the coach, and they were like, "No, we'll just pay you out." It was disgusting the way that they treated him. However, Tocchet has come into the Canucks locker room, and last year they had a dream season. They made the playoffs. They're one of the best teams in the league. Everybody was uh, clicking. Quinn Hughes, the captain, won the Norris Trophy. I think he had like 85 or 90 points last year. He's on pace for that again. Uh, their two top line setters, Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, were on the same page, and they were um, scoring at a 90-point clip. Like they were basically, and Thatcher Demko was healthy for a bit until the playoffs. Then he got injured. But Artur Silovs, the guy who came in from the minors, played pretty well for a couple rounds, but then ultimately they would fall uh, to, I think it was Vegas. Anyways, so that brings me to now, present day. Demko's still injured, but he's come back recently. He's slowly getting his feet back together, uh, slowly getting his footing wet in the NHL at a higher level. Quinn Hughes remains the top scorer. Pettersson got off to a very slow start, and Miller got off to a bit of a weird start. There was part of the beginning of the season. Miller took a leave of absence from the team, and they said, it's not team related. It's him dealing with some personal issues. But then it came out later that apparently he's been in a feud with Pedersen for the last almost since the playoffs last year, so almost 8 or 9 months. Because the story goes that JT Miller is one of the best locker room leaders in the world, and he tried to take Pedersen under his wing and essentially mentor him. And he was tough on him like an older brother would be to a younger brother. And he was hoping that showing him tough love when he was struggling, that Pedersen would then respond with one of his best seasons ever. Instead, Pedersen, like so many of us in this world, when someone starts like condescending us and goes from being our friend to basically arguing with us or belittling us regularly and they don't tell us why, just shuts off completely. And his version of shutting off was not only was he trying to ignore JT Miller both in game and on the bench, but um, he just shut off from playing hockey more or less, and so he wasn't playing up to the capability that he was able to, and he basically the Canucks are in one of the final wild card spots when they have all the tools on that team to be one of the better teams in the league. But because those two guys are feuding, it's really affecting the locker room chemistry. So because of because of that, rumors have come out that both guys refused to talk to the other one and basically concede, I was in the wrong or I was in the wrong, and can we put this behind us because for the sake of our jobs, the professionalism of our jobs, can we please get by this so that we can have at least a working relationship? And it seems as though from what I've read, neither guy is willing to concede to the other guy. And there's been talk that because Pedersen is I think 5 or 6 years younger than Miller, they're looking at trading Miller as opposed to trading Pedersen because that would just be a bonkers move because Pedersen has, I guess, the higher potential because he's younger. But recently it came out over the weekend that um, Miller was rumored to actually be scratched from the previously mentioned Canucks versus Oilers game where McDavid got the suspension. It was rumored that Miller was going to be scratched from that game because there was a trade that was going to be announced of him returning to the New York Rangers, a team that drafted him and that he played for 5 or 6 years ago for quite the package too. Philip Chytil, who's a good centerman, Charlie Lindgren, a good defenseman, and a number of draft picks. So they would have got a good haul for him. However, uh, the Canucks management and coaching staff um, called off the trade because I guess they came to an understanding with Miller that he does want to be in Vancouver and he doesn't want to go to New York and maybe something will work itself out. But then after the game, head coach Rick Tocchet came out and he said, "You know what? Everything that Miller touches seems to turn to um, poorness for us or bad or goes bad for us. So maybe he should, like the implication was maybe he should be traded." So it's a confusing situation in Vancouver because like as a fan of the entire NHL, you want different teams to do well. You don't necessarily want them to win the cup over your team, but having them be bitter and fall apart because of an internal issue and not because the other team's better than them necessarily is kind of um, disheartening to watch. I'm not a Canucks fan. I'll go on the record and say that. But as a fan, if I'm paying money to see my team do well, going to games and so forth, I do not want to see them bicker with each other and have like their private feud come out and show on the ice. Like you can hate you don't have to like all of your coworkers. But you can work with them civilly and you can still get the job done with whatever job you're in. So I mean for them to act like that is kind of childish and that's sad to see. Anyways, as I continue to cough up a storm here, once again, I apologize for how sick I am, but how I want to continue on with the podcast. This has been Nattering CHEL bonus episode, CHEL in 30, part number one. And this will go up on Thursday. Thanks again for nattering with us, and we'll be back next week, Tori and I. See ya.